Sup, and welcome to a random review. And in the previous installment of this, I watched for the first time and then reviewed the original Top Gun movie from 1986, which, as it turns out, I didn't really like, wasn't for me. And I watched it specifically because I knew that I was going to go see its sequel, Top Gun Maverick, regardless of what I thought of the original movie. And the reason I was so set on seeing Top Gun Maverick is because it was getting glowing reviews when it came out. And I ignored them all in the same way I try to ignore all reviews until I watch something first, because I like forming my own opinion first on something and then seeing what other people thought of it. But I just kept hearing about how good this movie supposedly was, and I was like, alright, whatever, I'll check it out. And my expectations were tempered because I didn't like the first movie, but I went to a theater anyway to check out Top Gun Maverick, which was released in 2022 and was directed by Joseph Kosinski. This movie takes place 3 decades after the events of the first film, in which our hero, the titular Maverick, played of course by Tom Cruise, is assigned to be the flight instructor of a group of young fighter pilots at Top Gun, who will soon be going on a dangerous espionage mission that none of them are prepared for. And it's up to Maverick to get them ready in a short amount of time, a task that is made even harder because one of those pilots is the son of Goose, Maverick's best friend, and the man who died at sea in front of Maverick in the previous movie. And that son, who's called Rooster, and is played by Miles Teller, still has a score to settle with Maverick. So, I'm in the theater, and I'm watching this. And as I was watching this, I was practically shaking my head because I couldn't believe how substantially better this was than the first movie. Like, I was floored, because in making this movie, they systematically corrected and undid all the things about the first movie that I didn't like, while still making this a faithful sequel to the original film. Like, they took the exoskeleton of Top Gun, they took the things about it that were good, like the concept of it and some of the music, like they kept Danger Zone by Kenny Loggins, and they threw out everything else and more or less remade it as a totally different movie, and it works perfectly. For instance, all the toxic masculinity crap from the first movie is gone. There are no shoehorned gay jokes in this. There are no scenes in this in which Maverick is leering over someone. There is a romance, but it's a very natural romance, relatively, in which he actually shows interest in the other person's life. And it isn't just all about him being this irresistible sex icon. Maverick is so much more interesting in this movie than he was in the first one, because he's much more of a 3-dimensional character. For instance, in the first movie, one of the things that bothered me was that when Goose, his wingman, died in it, the movie displayed this old-school, masculine mindset of dealing with grief, which was that Maverick just needed to get over it. Like Charlie, his love interest in the film, insulted him for needing to step away from flying. She called him a quitter, and one of the last scenes of the movie was Maverick throwing away Goose's dog tags to signify that he had moved on from his death. Well, in this movie, we find out that, like a normal person, Maverick hasn't moved on, that death had a traumatic effect on him, and that he's not only still dealing with it, but that it's affecting all of his relationships, and that he's terrified that one of his students is gonna die because of how dangerous their mission is. Unlike the first film, this movie humanizes Maverick. He's not this indomitable force of nature anymore, outside of still being an amazing pilot. He actually struggles with people. You see him upset with people and doubting himself and being scared. In the first Top Gun, everything came incredibly easy to Maverick. But here, he has to work to accomplish things. He feels more grounded. He feels less like a fantasy and more like a relatable person who just happens to be an amazing pilot, which made it so much easier for me to get invested in this. The story of Top Gun Maverick is also an enormous improvement. In the first film, outside of the very beginning and the very end, all of the flying scenes were just these practice runs that built up to nothing, in which the only question was whether or not Maverick would finish top of his class. And even if he didn't, he could still graduate, so none of it really mattered. And the final fight at the end of the movie was barely explained, came totally out of nowhere, and was really short. It was only 10 minutes long. In Top Gun Maverick, however, you're still watching practice runs, but they establish very early on that these pilots are actually training for something specific that will pay off at the end of the movie. They outline from the very beginning what the final fight is going to be and how dangerous it is and how little time they have to prepare for it. In other words, the practice runs are actually important this time. They set the stage for the climax. And as an added bonus, they look so much better than they did in the first movie. The cinematography in Top Gun wasn't bad by any means, but the cinematography in Top Gun Maverick is incredible. And I'm not a plane guy. I'm not that into fighter jets or dogfighting or military warfare in general, honestly. This kind of stuff normally doesn't appeal to me. It's a byproduct of the fact that I'm just not that into war-related movies to begin with. But there's something about the way they filmed the flying scenes in this movie that's just engrossing. There's such an incredible amount of weight and speed that you get from seeing these jets in action. And it's because so much of this, like in the first movie, to its credit, is filmed using real jets, with the actors really performing a lot of these acts in the cockpits. And it makes the movie feel so much more believable and easy to get sucked into than it would have if this was predominantly done with CGI. CGI is not a bad thing. I'm not anti-CGI by any stretch. But CGI, no matter how much it advances, is always going to be detectable if you use too much of it. And the moment it becomes detectable, everything you're seeing can start to feel artificial. And once you reach that point where you realize that what you're seeing is fake, it becomes easier and easier to lose interest in it, and for it to have less of an impact on you. The fact that these flights come off as real, the fact that you can make yourself believe that Tom Cruise is a Navy fighter pilot who is really putting himself in danger, is not only a testament to the way this was shot, it's a testament to the phenomenal shape that Tom Cruise was in. Tom Cruise was almost 60 years old when this movie came out, which was an almost unprecedented age for the star of a critically acclaimed, big-budget action movie. There was a James Bond movie that came out in 1985 called A View to a Kill, and it starred Roger Moore, who was 57 at the time, and people ridiculed that movie because Roger Moore looked old as hell in it. People found it ridiculous that he was still making out with supermodels and snowboarding and performing action stunts. Tom Cruise was basically as old as Moore was in this, and his character was doing things that were far more physically taxing than Moore's was, and yet you accept it, you buy it, because Tom Cruise's pedigree as an action star and the way he took care of himself were so great that, yeah, you don't question if he could really do this. And that is a hell of an accomplishment. The list of actors in history who could play a jet pilot at 57 or 58 or 59 and not have it strain credulity for even a moment is so slim. And that's what makes Tom Cruise so special. Say what you will about him, because the dude was weird, but god damn if he wasn't also in a lot of great movies. maybe the biggest improvement over the first film is the ending. The final half hour of this movie, when Maverick and the other pilots embark on their mission, is thrilling. And part of the reason why, for me, weirdly enough, is because of Tom Cruise's age. Like, if Tom Cruise was 30 in this, I probably wouldn't have been at the edge of my seat watching this, because I would have been saying to myself, he's gonna be fine. They're not gonna kill off his character when he's this young. I know how movies work. But because he was almost 60 in this, and because so much of this movie revolved around him grappling with death, I knew, or I thought I knew, when I watched this, that this was it. That Maverick's story was going to end here one way or another. And so I watched this conclusion fully believing that Maverick could die in this, just as I believed that any of the younger pilots could also die in this, since they weren't as skilled as Maverick and were extra vulnerable to the danger they were all facing. And by the time this was over, I was in love with this movie. The only things I can say about it that aren't me just drooling over it are things that don't detract from it being great. So, the movie does follow the structure of the first Top Gun to such an extent that you will have deja vu when you watch this. Like, there are times where this is practically a remake of the first movie, where things repeat that are so unlikely to occur in that specific way at that specific time that it's almost like getting struck by lightning. It's so improbable. And the only other thing I'll say, and this is my only real bugaboo with Top Gun Maverick, bugaboo is a great word, right? Is that we don't really know anything about the bad guys, which is a carryover from the first movie. It's not a debilitating issue, but when Maverick and the others finally cross paths with the enemy, there's kind of a Gran Turismo vibe to the bad guys, in that we see enemy jets, but it doesn't really feel like anyone's inside them, or that a real person is inside them. And if the movie had given the bad guys just a smidge of personality, just a smidge of identity, even if they had just made up a fake country for them, like, oh, they're from Slavanistan and we're at war with them, I think the finale would have been even better, because it did stick out to me. Even if, again, it didn't keep me from being all in with this movie. But other than that, Top Gun Maverick is wonderful, and I was not expecting this to be as good as it is. I mean, I can't stress enough how much better this is than the first movie. I know people love Top Gun and everything, but to me, there's not even the slightest debate between which of these movies is superior. This is like comparing a filet mignon to a Slim Jim that's been left out in the sun all day and has ants crawling on it and bird shit. Top Gun Maverick is one of the biggest upgrades I've ever witnessed, and I'm glad I got to witness it in a theater. For me, this was the kind of movie that when you're done watching it, you immediately want to talk to someone else about it so that you can both revel in the experience of how great it was. So, yeah, I give Top Gun Maverick a magnificent 9.63 out of 10. And good luck finding another sequel that took 36 years to be made that still stars the same actor as the previous film that's anywhere close to as good as this is.